You are listening to The Michael Lodge Show. Wealth, business, and taxes. Oh yeah, and some politics. Let's get started.
So here we go. It's a Saturday morning. It's a beautiful day. I hope everyone has got up. I hope everyone got up with a good feeling in the heart, but I'm wondering if you really do. There is so much chaos in this world at the moment. I think if we look at this, of what's going on with vaccines, with the border crisis, with now what's happening in Afghanistan, we should take it as a learning experience. I know it's not the kind that we really want to go through, but let me tell you, every crisis is a learning experience on leadership. I think if we go back and we look at presidents and how they led and how business people have led, we can come up to a good view of where we're at today on leadership, especially leadership in this nation, leadership in our corporate industries. We have let politics become our guiding decision-making process instead of what is logical, what is ethical, what moves people to become better, and what makes a nation safe and sound and confident. If you go back to George Washington, he said that 99% of failures come from people who make excuses. Now, this applies to presidents of nations or presidents of companies or managers of departments or ministers who lead their congregations. If there is a crisis or a concern or something that has gone tremendously bad within their structure, and if they begin making excuses and pointing fingers at other people, that's not leadership. What leadership does is look at the crisis, find out how to respond to it, and work with this team to get it done, to get it solved. He doesn't go back and point fingers at people before him. He doesn't point fingers at people beside him. But what the leader does is he leads. And he attacks the crisis and resolves the crisis. So that his company, so that his group, so his church, so his nation can move forward. Once you have a leader who is willing to throw people under the bus, and sometimes bushes too, is not leading. He's dealing with his own personal ego needs, and he doesn't care anybody around him. So those who point fingers, those who make excuses, those are the dangerous people, because they normally do not have any kind of plan of action to take on the crisis. The other issue is, and I love this of Thomas Jefferson. He was a wise old man and a good president. And he made this statement. He said that whenever you do a thing, act as if all of the world were watching. In other words, you are making some important leadership decisions. And you've got to make sure that what you say, what you do, how you act, how you respond, the weight of that responsibility is knowing that a whole world is watching you, and a whole nation is watching you, a whole church is watching you. Whatever your capacity as a leader is, those individuals are watching you. So whatever you do, whatever you say, however you respond, however you act, however you move through the process, you've got to do it knowing knowing that people are watching you. As I said, this crisis that we have in America at the moment and across the world is a good study of what leadership is and is not. It's one of those situations where we have got to be very careful about what we say and do because we affect so many. If you are a minister, and if there is a leadership crisis within your organization, you know that your church members are watching you. If you are a president of a company and you are going through a crisis, people are watching. They're listening. They're taking notes, just like we're taking notes now on leadership. The other thing is John Quincy Adams. He made a statement, and it goes like this. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. So if you have leaders who are not inspiring you, who are lying to you, who are sending you in directions that you should not even be going into, and if you as a leader are not trying to learn as much as you possibly can and listening to those individuals around you who have the experience level that you might not have, you better do it. Because that's what leaders do. They listen, they ask questions, they study the matter over. That's what leaders do. Let's go to Andrew Jackson. Any man worth his salt will stick up for what he believes right. But it takes a slightly better man to acknowledge instantly and without reservation that he is in error. This is a very dangerous type of individual who is so into himself, so ego-driven, that when he makes some mistakes or blunders or fails in his leadership role, he still sticks to it. He knows he's done wrong, but he still sticks to it. He sticks with the same old lines, the same old spin. This applies to everybody in leadership, no matter what level you're at. If you believe in what you believe in, if you know that you're right, you stick to it. But if you know that you have made an error, you will admit to that error and find a better path. But if your ego is so tough, so driven politically on what your political agenda is all about, and doesn't take into consideration that it's wrong for the group that you're in, and you stick to it, and it's wrong, and it's failing, this is a dangerous person. These are the kind of individuals that you have to take into consideration every single word that they say, because you need to know if he means it or if he's just saying it. Or if he's just trying to hide over the fact that he's wrong. I've been wrong so many times, I tell you. Long time ago, I finally learned that I had to admit when I was wrong. And I had to go to those individuals who I had wronged and make it right. And find out a better way to do it. Oh, if only I could tell you the times I have been wrong. Many, many times it could fill a book. I feel sorry for the angels up in heaven who are keeping the notes in my book. They are so busy. They're so busy that I'm sure that they have a team that takes shifts. Because I tell you, I have done some doozies in my lifetime. But I learned from it. And now I know what is right and what is wrong and what is ethical and what is unethical, and I know in which direction that I need to keep pointing myself at. Now, that doesn't mean that it's easy. I have to remind myself about it every single day. Martin Van Buren. It is easier to do a job right than to explain why you didn't. Now, that is so very true. In leadership, it's so much easier to say, okay, this is what happened and this is why we had success. But it's so much more difficult to explain why we failed. Why? What did we do wrong that it did not work out? You know what? I respect people who can stand up and say, you know what? The reason why we didn't do this is because of this, this, and that. Not blaming people, not pointing fingers at people, but on the technical side of where it failed. Abraham Lincoln says, leave nothing for tomorrow which can be done today, which means that when you have a crisis, you have to look at that crisis and you have got to find a resolution to solve that crisis. You don't go into hiding. You don't blame it on other people. You don't return phone calls. No, you have to head it straight on. Several years ago, I had one of the largest tax practices in probably Los Angeles. And we were doing very well. We were growing by leaps and bounds, and we were doing what was good for the community and for our clients. But there was one client. I mean, not one client, but there was one tax practitioner that we had that decided to become greedy. And that greed created fraud. And that fraud created a crisis for my firm. Now, his actions did not touch my firm. The money that was in fraud did not go into any of my bank accounts or into my company. The only way we knew about it is when one day the IRS showed up with their criminal investigative team and took him away. That action got out there. It became a crisis. Became a crisis internally and externally because the clients began to call and find out what was going on. And of course, it was in the press and it was going on and on and on. Now, I could have run away. I could have said, okay, enough of this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to address this anymore. I mean, I was literally getting letters with condoms in it saying that I would need that where I was going when I had nothing to do with what was going on. So, I had to address the problem. So I sat down and I assigned duties to individuals. An individual that would respond to the client with a certain message of what happened, and that we were still going on. We were still in private practice. I had nothing to do with our firm, and we went on. Unfortunately, what happens with that is that individuals think that you know of everything that was going on. They blame you for that. They attack you for that. And they start making demands that you have nothing that you can even do to help them with that. But we went through it. We went through the crisis. And I truly believe that with us being upfront with these individuals that were calling in, they had more respect for what we were saying and doing because we told the truth. We did what was ethically right. We addressed the problem, we addressed the issue, and we told them what we were still doing and that we were still there waiting for them. Now, we lost a lot of clients. Crisis, one thing that's good about a crisis in business is that it cleans house. It cleans out those individuals that probably you shouldn't be doing business with in the first place. It really shows who within your team is loyal and not loyal. those that can take stress and can't take stress. And that was one of the things that I truly learned, is that even in a crisis, you can learn so much. And that sometimes a crisis is a good benefit because it cleans house. It cleans out those individuals that you don't need to do. But when there is a crisis, you meet it head on. Theodore Roosevelt said that it is hard to fail, but it is worse never to have tried to succeed. And when individuals see you in a crisis and they see that you're not even trying, to make it better for you as a client, or them as a client, or them as a friend of the firm, if they don't see you trying, they lose faith in you very quickly. Not in a matter of days, it happens right then, because if they see you hiding, they see you out of the way, they see you not even trying to respond, the trust goes away within hours. Your reputation is shot. But if you address it head on, you sit down with your team and you say, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to resolve it, this is how we're going to respond to it, this is how we're going to get through this crisis and become better at the other side. Those are the kinds of leaders that you truly need to have. It's hard to fail. It is hard to fail. I have failed in many businesses because they didn't make sense. They were the kind of businesses that they were at the whim. Everybody was doing it at that moment. But when too many people are doing it at the moment, it fails. Unless you're truly devoted to that. And I will admit, I was not truly devoted to it. But where I was a success at is where I was devoted to that particular business, that particular subject, and that particular result for my clients. That's where I succeeded. And when there was an issue, I met it head on. When you're in business, you have a whole bunch of issues that come at you at one, and sometimes at one single time. But you learn how to resolve the issues. And you learn how to truly build a good team around you. I had a great team. It weeded out the weak, but what remained was the strong. Franklin D. Roosevelt said this: "The only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today." And I think probably one of the best quotes is by Harry Truman. It's amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. And he is 100% right on that. If you are so politically motivated that your ego is the drive and that's all you care about, you're going to fail. But if you are the kind of leader who doesn't care who gets the credit and who rises up to the top and who does the best, those are the individuals who are going to take your crisis, hit it head on, resolve it and move forward and become a true leader. People have their faith restored when they see a leader who focuses in and gets things done. You see, crisis can teach us a whole lot of things. That's why I always tell people when I talk to them, make sure you're prepared for a crisis. Make sure that you've looked at your leadership ability and if you can go through a crisis, because at some point in time, you will go through a crisis. And how you resolve it, and how you lead people through that crisis and lead clients through that crisis is either going to make you or break you as a leader. I always tell people, make sure you're prepared for a crisis. Sit down someday and just say, if a crisis happened, what are the priorities that I need to put into place in order to resolve the issue? Quickly. Don't let it drag on for days and days and days, not responding to it, not talking to anybody, not talking to your advisors, and certainly not pointing fingers and blaming other people. but sit down and put together a plan of action that is right for you in order to resolve that crisis. And if you don't know how to do that, hire a crisis management individual to come in and sit with you for one day to go through that process, because you're going to need it at some point in time. Now, you see, the problem with politicians is that they do not take leadership the way that leaders should. Instead, what they become is politicians. Politicians never take responsibility for what they're doing. Instead, they point the finger at other people and blame other people. That is what a politician is. A politician is never a leader. Never a leader. Understand that, most importantly. If you want to get things done in this world, you got to take individuals who have had accomplishments in their life and put them in roles where they can help the nation, or where they can help your company, where they can help your church, whatever the entity may be. Find those individuals with the history of accomplishments that can help you move forward, and that can teach you how to be a good leader. I used to always say at the very beginning, when I formed my company, which was back in 1984, and at that time I was taking on projects that no one else wanted to have, and I always told them, you focus on what you're good at and I'll focus on what you're bad at. And that's how I made my reputation from the very beginning of time, is taking on things that no one else wanted to take on. And it worked. And I got more and more calls and calls. People heard about me, and pretty soon I was called in to play that role. And I love that role. I always have loved that role. That's why I love being a mediator, because now my role is bringing two individuals together and resolving an issue. I love that role, and I truly focus on that role. But you see, leaders must have the ability to lead. If they can't lead, then we're in trouble. It not just affects the people that are around you, but it affects the whole entity that you're within, and it affects others outside of that entity. If you cannot lead responsibly, ethically, you're going to do a whole bunch more damage, and you probably should step down from that role because you're not the right fit for that role. And there is nothing wrong with saying, okay, I am not the right fit for this role, so I'm going to go in another direction. Leadership is so very important. And as we look at the crises around us in our nation, in the international globe, follow the leaders. See how they have led. And when you see a leader that cannot lead, ask the question, am I that kind of leader? Listen, if you like my podcast and you like the content of my podcasts and vlogs and blogs, support me by going to www.buymeacoffee.com/Michael Lodge. Once again, that's www.buymeacoffee.com/Michael Lodge. The text will be within the message center of this podcast. You can find it there. If you have any business questions or leadership questions or mediation questions or dispute and conflict issues, send it to mediator@lodge, LODGE-co.com. Again, that's mediator@lodge-co.com. I want everybody to go out there. Listen, we have a great opportunity to study leadership. We have the ability right now to really watch the leaders that we know are trying to take care of a crisis and see how they are responding. Study as much as you possibly can about leadership, because leadership is what drives the success of any business, any church, any nonprofit organization, any nation. Leadership and the ability to address crisis is what we can learn from this whole situation. This is Mike Lodge. I'll talk with you soon. Everybody have a great weekend. Bye-bye and God bless. This podcast has been produced by Michael Lodge, fully focused on content.